fuck did you think was gonna happen?
While she's spewing this fucking garbage out of that sewer hole in her face.
Like $150 million fucking dollars to Pakistan? Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. You want to see something fucking awesome?
A lot of us watch this unfold in front of our TV screens and on social media, and many sharing images like the ones you're seeing right now, comparing the police presence at the U.S. Capitol during the Black Lives Matter protest, that's only right, versus yesterday's riot, a far different scene.
Did he seriously just say in his opening statement that Black Lives Matter in June was a protest and January 6th was a riot? Interesting concept. Oh, so we're going to jump on the race bait train and we're going to compare the protest at the Capitol on January 6th versus Black Lives Matter protests in Washington, D.C. in June of 2020. Oh yeah, I'm gonna fucking tear this up.
Wake Up Charlotte's Billie Jean Shaw now joining us, contrasting the two at this point. And Billie Jean, a lot of folks saw those two images and saw what was a hypocrisy with the way these things are handled in our society today.
Oh, so this asshat wants to talk about the hypocrisy and the way situations are handled. Okay, let's see what else is going on.
One of the big problems that we're trying to tackle.
All right, Wake Up Charlotte. Let's see what you fucking idiots have to say.
Good morning, Ben. That's right. And instead of putting a piece together where I spoke about it, I just put some images together and I want you to watch and make your own conclusion.
Oh, here it comes. How did I not see this coming? So they're going to pick a reporter. And of course, it's going to be a light-skinned African-American lady. Kind of biased, don't you think? Oh, I can't fucking wait to see this shit.
About 20 minutes before a mandatory curfew started Monday night, federal officers and National Guard troops outside the White House suddenly moved on peaceful protesters, hitting them with flash grenades and tear gas while shooting rubber bullets.
I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
So, in her first clip, it's at the BLM protest in Washington, D.C. The reporter says it's 20 minutes before the implementation of a mandatory curfew, and yet the crowd is still there. Maybe the police intervened because it was time to disperse. And there it is, the end of her first clip segment, and it's the president, Donald Trump, addressing the nation, saying he will use the U.S. military to solve a problem for them. It was pretty fucking simple to understand what he meant by for them. These BLM movements and protests and looting have been going on throughout multiple cities. All these cities were run by Democrat leaders that would take no action. So President Trump steps up and says, as the president of this country, I will use the military to solve the problem that the Democrats won't. So, I guess that makes him a villain. Fucking idiots. Here it comes, the first clip from January 6th, Inauguration Day, and the insurrection at the Capitol. Let's see what they show us.
Stunning images as rioters supporting President Trump overrun the Capitol.
Holy fucking shit. Did you guys hear the verbiage that she used? Rioters who support President Trump. I'm sorry. They're protesting. They're not rioters, they're protesting. Throughout every video clip of BLM, it's never the rioters, it's the protesters. They're peaceful protesters. But when Trump supporters get together and want to reciprocate that kind of behavior, we're rioters.
scuffling with police. On the floor of the House, officers with guns drawn, with protesters just outside the door. Here you see rioters trying to break down a door, and you hear a gunshot.
Holy shit! Rioters are trying to break down the doors! Isn't that the same shit BLM did? Weren't they like breaking down doors, burning buildings, looting, rioting? Yeah, okay. I can see where they might be fucking equal.
But we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you.
So I'm a little confused. Why did Wake Up Charlotte put a clip in this segment of President Trump addressing the rioters or protesters at the Capitol, telling them to go home? Why was that put in there? I don't know about you, but I don't see the harm in a leader looking at his constituents and saying, we can't stoop to their level. Don't destroy the building and do all this damage and be like them. We love you for your support, but go home. Why was that clip put in this segment? I would love an answer on that. I know why that clip of Trump was put in that specific segment. They're going to try and make him look like a villain, like he's encouraging this. Those last few swatches, I saw Trump supporters outside the Capitol building chanting USA, and then I also happened to see them walking around peacefully. I don't see them throwing beer bottles, bricks, rocks, smashing car windows, jumping on vehicles. So, yeah, I could understand why, BLM may have been treated a little different.
It was strange because it was almost like there was this call to not use force.
Well, see, this is interesting because Representative Cori Bush, a Democrat from Missouri, wants to say it's almost like there was no call to use force. Well, Representative Bush, are you familiar with the escalation of force continuum as it is taught to law enforcement? You can only use a less or equal amount of force. And if I'm not mistaken, once they were inside the Capitol and things got a little, let's say, violent, law enforcement reacted with a pretty significant amount of force. So I don't understand what you're getting at here. But let's see what else Representative Bush has to say.
Had it been the same amount of people, but had they been black, we wouldn't have made it up those steps. We wouldn't have made it to be able to get into the door and bust windows and go put our feet up on desks of Congress members. We wouldn't have made it that far. We would have been shot. We would have been tear gassed. We would rubber bullets. That would have happened before we made it there.
Did I really just hear that right? Did Representative Bush just say that if the crowd was the same size, but black, and approached the Capitol the same way that the protesters at the Capitol did, they wouldn't have gotten inside the building? They wouldn't have got up the steps because they were black? Maybe it had nothing to do with the color of your skin, but everything to do with the fact that the people at the Capitol, they gathered in the city and they peacefully walked to the Capitol. Black Lives Matter destroyed everything in their fucking wake. Flipping over cars, jumping on cars, smashing car windows, setting stores on fire, looting, not to mention the violence towards people who didn't share their point of views. They had no singular destination that they were going to. They were just wreaking havoc and creating chaos and dissension. They weren't protesting, they were rioting. Whereas the Trump supporters that quote-unquote stormed the Capitol assembled, they marched to a destination and began to protest. That's why they were able to get as far as they did. They weren't throwing rocks and beer bottles and Molotov cocktails and, burning down a city. They took their fight to a singular destination and inflicted their rage onto the people they were pissed off at. But let's see what else Representative Bush has to say.
We need to call it what it is. It's white supremacy. It was white privilege, and it was the call of our president.
Holy shit. Are you serious, Representative Bush? Are you serious? White supremacy? This whole thing is about white supremacy. And President Donald Trump is the leader of a white supremacist movement. You have got to be the most ignorant person, because you truly have no idea what white supremacy is. Apparently, you need to go back and study World War II, the Nazi invasion and takeover of Germany, and the way people of the Jewish faith were persecuted. That defines white supremacy. Donald Trump has not spoken of nor tried to inspire any such radical behavior. Wow. This is the intelligence of our politicians. You're going to sit there as a representative of this country and race bait. You, like most politicians, fucking disgust me.
This morning, a lot of questions are still surrounding how all of this happened. So people are wondering how the security was not in place for something like this, to prevent something like this from happening. And others are also wondering if these protesters or rioters, now this was not a protest.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, TV reporter whose name I do not know. I do not mean to cut you off mid-sentence, but did you just say that the protesters at the Capitol were rioters because it wasn't a protest? Please tell me you did not just say that. Let's hear it again.
These protesters or rioters, now this was not a protest, were black and brown people. What would have been the outcome, especially when you think about just 6 months ago, the rubber bullets, the tear gas that happened, that were put out by police during the Black Lives Matter protests, especially following the George Floyd death.
Oh, sorry. How did I know? Sorry, I was finishing up my fried chicken sandwich. How did I know that apparently George Floyd was going to get mentioned in here somehow? I just kind of knew it. Yeah, does not surprise me.
I applaud you right now for your composure, because pulling the curtain back a little bit on TV news, when your story is airing, I see you. I can see you and not just the story. This is emotional, for anybody, but watching you watch this and hearing the stark difference between how rioters yesterday were treated and how peaceful protests of Black Lives Matter treated.
Hi, random lady. I don't know who you are and how you got into this segment, but I was quite interested in hearing what you had to say. And I find it very interesting how, once again, you had to point out that the protesters for BLM were peaceful protesters, and the protesters at the Capitol were rioters. So, let's take a look at the outcome of these BLM peaceful protests. You know, all I can say is wow. To call Black Lives Matter a protest, and the protest at the Capitol a riot, is pretty much ass backwards. BLM is more rioting, looting, pillaging, burning, while what happened at the Capitol building was an honest-to-God protest. And for people to go out there and try and make it into something it's not, none of this had anything to do with race. Not one thing to do with race. Two different movements, two different methods, and it just goes to show how politicians will flip everything around to suit their needs and pin the people against each other. The reason Black Lives Matter has been treated differently during their peaceful protests versus the rioters at the Capitol had nothing to do with the color of your skin. What it had to do with was the wake of damage and devastation your movement left in its wake as it moved from city to city. That kind of destruction needs to be met with force when you're causing that much damage and that much of a safety risk to the public. Yes, force needs to be used, and it needs to be used in abundance. People surrounding one building trying to voice their opinion is not a riot. Kicking in storefront windows and, flipping over cars and graffitiing up the whole neighborhood and, setting fires and beating people down because they don't agree with your point of view. That's rioting. That's not protesting. Maybe everybody who is out there saying BLM is a protest movement and the Capitol is rioting, maybe they need to pull out a fucking dictionary and learn the difference between the two. Because a lot of you fuckers are ignorant. So if you want to know why you're getting met with force, look at your actions. Don't look at your skin tone. Because your fucking skin tone has nothing to do with it. And if you're going to pull that card and you're going to say, oh, it's only because of the color of my skin, guess what? You're fucking weak. And you need a scapegoat. Because you're not looking at your own shortcomings and your own actions. And you're not taking responsibility for what you do. You're looking for something to blame. So pull your head out of your ass. Start acting like Americans and not fucking animals. And to the Trump supporters at the Capitol that got out of hand and started getting violent, no. I don't agree with that either. But I understand why you were at the Capitol. It started out as a good point of view and a good method and a good idea. Somewhere along the line, somebody fucked it up and shit got out of hand. But it wasn't taking over a portion of Seattle. It wasn't burning down police precincts and attacking police officers and civilians who back police officers. That's criminal activity. That's not protesting. And I'm sure there was some criminal activity that took place at the Capitol, obviously. People on both sides committing those acts need to be held accountable. So you can't hold the Trump supporters and the protesters at the Capitol in to one standard, and then allow the BLM and Antifa fucking douchebags to do the opposite. And, allow them to get away with whatever they want. So if you're going to hold one side accountable, hold them both accountable. But for the love of God, quit trying to play the race card on fucking everything. That shit's getting fucking old. Because it's your only go-to, and you think it gives you a reason to act like fucking animals. And it doesn't.